questions at any time. If we are not hitting on a topic that you'd like to know more about, please put it in the chat section. We would love to hear from you and about anything that is of interest to you that involves ACC. So tonight, everybody who is watching will be entered into a drawing to win a great gift basket full of stuff that we picked out from the Alpena Community College bookstore. High quality merchandise.
ACC swag.
Absolutely, ACC swag. And we will announce the winner in an email following tonight's broadcast. So without further ado, welcome. This is Besser Atrium, newly renovated, and you'll see we have a beautiful fireplace now, and we will start with our first topic, introduced by Brenda Herman.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I do want to add to a bit of Mary's introduction. If you see Mary or I glancing down at our cell phones, we're not being rude. We're receiving your questions via text message. So send questions in our way, and we'll be receiving them on our cell phones here. So I get the pleasure of introducing our first topic tonight. I'm going to ask Dr. MacMaster here to give us an update on one of the most exciting things that have happened on campus since I came on board about 3 years ago, and that is our Vandalia Hall renovation project. Obviously, I'm sure most of you know that Vandalia Hall is the original building on ACC's campus, and we embarked upon an $8.7 million project to renovate that building into our new Center for Health Sciences. And Don, I would love if you can kind of give the folks a little bit of an overview of the project, what we set out to accomplish, and kind of the progress that we've made to this point.
Well, thank you, Brenda, and thank you, Mary. Thank you all for tuning in. It's great to be part of this inaugural event. Vandalia Hall has been a part of the life of the college for close to 70 years, and it's certainly been a part of my life for the last 3 or 4 years. And it's a delight to see where we are. The Center for Health Sciences was a key driver in our decision to undergo the project. Our nursing program is very strong. Many of the local nurses working at Mid-Michigan have gone through our program. We have cohorts now in Oscoda. And, you know, they were space-bound, technology-bound, and had very limited visibility where they have been and currently are on the second floor of NRC. So it seemed, as we've done with concrete and UTT and 2 of our premier occupational programs, and nursing is certainly fits that category, that renovating the building, which needed extensive renovation, and coupling that with landing nursing in a new home made some sense. So we started with that. The state understood that very well, and the first piece of funding that came in place was $3,350,000 from capital outlay. And ordinarily, that's one of the last pieces to come in. This was good, and it complicated things too, because, you know, prior to the pandemic, people may not remember, but we certainly encountered the rapidly escalating cost of construction. So what had been a certain figure rose about 1.5% a month. You know, so the cost of the project was a difficult thing to manage, and you know, we had a certain cap on what we could spend. So you know, you have to constantly refine or adjust the budget, and we did that. We did that several times, and eventually the project got going, and then the pandemic hit, of course. That complicated things because many of the contractors weren't local. But regardless of all that, we are now, the health sciences wing is basically complete. We have staff that was in the administrative wing, the wing that faces the hospital, who have moved over into that completed area and are doing college work. Nursing program, of course, is still where it was until the semester ends with graduation on May 5th. and then they will move over. The part of the nursing move that's most exciting and challenging is the technology, the mannequins, the anatomage table. The technology that's coming needs to be integrated into where the instruction will take place. It's a very exciting piece of the puzzle. And right now, it looks lovely. I was just in there with my wife, Tina, Dr. Tina Rossi. Have to give a shout out to her. We had our 30th anniversary last night, and we walked through, kind of, against the law, but we did it anyway. And and the hallways are very bright, very colorful. The rooms are, the windows are in, they're new windows. It's just a much more inviting place than I think people will remember.
Now, can you kind of paint a picture and describe for our listeners what those nursing labs look like in the new space? The basic nursing lab and the advanced nursing labs?
Yes, the basic lab is focused on LPNs, and it is a large room on the north side of the building where there will be 8 hospital beds. And this is a wonderful space. I mean, it is a beautiful spot. And then the advanced nursing lab, which is for the RN students, if you can picture, is situated at the end of the hallway with kind of a circular design like you would see on the second floor at Mid-Michigan. And in that array, there are 5 rooms that will have mannequins and a lot of technology to capture how students and mannequins interact. And this will be a really neat part of the instructional and something we don't currently do. And that interaction can be archived or captured, and students can see how they've performed when the mannequins are programmed to do certain things like simulate a heart attack. And so all of this is new technology that our nursing program, the nursing programs around the state have, but we don't. And so we're excited, and nursing, the quality of the nursing program is very strong, as you know. And so we're excited to have been able to pull this together for them. Additionally, a piece that's very appealing to me is the view toward the river now. That is seen on the south side of the building. And in that new wing with the new windows and some landscaping that's been done, it's just a...
Might have done that.
Yeah. It's a beautiful view.
It is gorgeous.
And the rest of the building, in the center part where the kind of the lounge used to be, which had been fairly dark and kind of underutilized, now has a prow type of extension and with all windows. And it is a lovely view, and I think it will be a place where the community and the students can gather in a way that's very classy and will represent the college well, and it's just something that we don't have and will.
It's a very nice upgrade to that space. I spent many hours in that lounge area when I was a student here, and I'll tell you, the square footage of that space has not really increased that much, but it feels about 3 times larger just from that, vaulted ceiling and all the windows. You feel like you're outside. The outdoors are coming in. It just was brilliant design, and it's beautiful. It'll be a nice addition.
Thank you for. I agree. We were in there last night, and it's been painted. It's not done yet, but it's nearing done. Some drywall is up. The HVAC is in. They're to the painting phase, and it's very bright and very appealing. And then work on the administrative wing, which extends toward the hospital. That's where normally we have HR and our business office and financial aid, critical functions of the college. Where they normally are is being retrofitted. So some abatement was done. Now the HVAC is coming in. New windows went in this week. So the intent is to be done with the entire building and have everyone back by fall semester, which starts the third week of August. So it seems like a long ways off. It seems like it's been a long project, but I think we'll make it. And
We'll be here before we know it.
yes, it will. And we're excited.
Is there any questions from the audience out there that has a specific question about Vandalia Hall or the progress or what's to come about our nursing program? We'll give a few moments to see if anybody has anything coming in on that. Don, thanks for the wonderful update on the space there. We are very excited. I would like to comment from the foundation standpoint that we had an overwhelming generous response from the community and alumni, local businesses, the ACC Foundation, and our board of directors were able to generate support in excess of $3 million towards this project. And it just really goes to show that people believe in ACC and the mission that we're trying to accomplish here, that higher education is important for our community and for our students. And I want to thank all of you who've contributed to this project and others. So it looks like we don't have any questions from the audience. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary here for our next topic.
Well, so we were talking a lot about what's happening across the street. Folks who are familiar with the campus know that we're in Besser Tech and across the street, Vandalia Hall, where there's been construction now for over a year. But soon, the construction crews will be moving over to this side of the street because we will be doing a huge renovation and upgrade to our manufacturing and welding programs here in Besser Tech. It's really exciting. These are two programs that are wildly popular and in demand in our area as far as jobs go. What's going to happen? How are we paying for it? What's it going to look like? It's exciting.
How did this come about?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, those are all great questions and pertinent ones. I would start with they are in demand programs, you know, manufacturing and welding. Those are those people in those sectors have flourished in spite of the pandemic. It is to the benefit of the community. You know, our neighbor Besser Company, you know, we've worked with closely for decades. Their business is good. You know, the companies that Greg Winter owns and operates so effectively, you know, they can't find enough people, and they employ hundreds. So for us, the impetus of it was that these are two programs that are strong. We have two good, aspiring, young, motivated instructors. You know, they connect with their students, and they're doing neat things. The space, and it dates back to Besser Tech when Besser Tech was built.
My goodness.
And it's not an attractive space.
No, it's
frankly.
dark. It's not well ventilated.
Right. The ventilation has always been an issue. So, you know, the fuming and that sort of thing is not good. And because the fuming isn't good, the walls have kind of a grimy effect. This doesn't seem to, you know, hinder the students and their creativity and their passion for it. And it is legitimate. People in those programs, I talk to them quite a bit, or they come and talk to me. There are many young women in welding in particular,
Absolutely.
and some in manufacturing too. In fact, I had a visit not more than a week ago from a woman who was in welding, who said that, I mean, it was the most authentic and wonderful message I'd heard in a long time. Her life had been changed by the program. She was worked in retail in management, and you know, where she worked closed, like a lot of retail does.
Right.
And she was kind of a little bit at loose ends, like almost on a whim. She tried welding, found out that it was fascinating and that she was really good at it, and that she really enjoyed the program and got a lot from the instructor. The instructor went above and beyond to help her out. The instructors in that area, Tim Rotz, Andrew Pad, and David Cummins, work well together. They're not kind of operating in silos. They collaborate. And she has a job. She has a good job working as a welder while she's going to school. So this is kind of, this is why we do what we do, is to hear these stories. And so the opportunity really came about when, I was beginning to think, okay, how could we do this and how could we pay for it? And these are two key points. So a local person, a person who used to work locally, Lee Sherry, who was the economic development person for Target prior to Jim Claridge.
I see.
A friend of mine.
Right.
Jim was too, and Mike Mahler now. They do a great job. But this Lee Sherry was here in Alpena for a long time, and then he went to work for EDA, United States Economic Development Administration. And he ran a program called a Public Works grant program. And I connected with Lee. I was kind of trolling around to see what might be possible. And I connected with Lee, and it happened to be that Eric Keller, Senator Peters' northern representative, was hosting or asked the college to host a forum for federal agencies. This happened just prior to the pandemic.
Right, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, and because Eric and I were doing the elbow bump.
That's right. Yeah.
We kind of thought, well, maybe this will take 2 or 3 weeks and we'll be done with
Sure.
it. Well,
famous last words.
Yeah. So Lee came up for that, and I walked him through, what we were thinking. And he said, this is great. We would fund that. And the cost share was 50-50 at that time. So the college would have to come up with half. That's still a really good deal. And there was a long process of grant writing. This is part of it. You have to figure that out and do it right and authentically. And but then when the pandemic hit and there was a lot of federal stimulus, the ratio changed from 50-50 to 80-20.
In our favor.
Well, yes, 80% being the federal share.
That's great.
So then it was like, man, we got to get this.
Yeah.
And Dawn Stone worked a lot on it with me. Nick Breggy did. So there was a lot of pieces that had to be pulled together. But basically, we knew that if we did the work, we would get it.
Mm-hmm.
And the premise is the space that manufacturing and welding are in is too small for both of them. And there's a large load-bearing block wall between the two programs in Besser-Tech. We have a large space where auto body used to be. Auto body we no longer offer. And it was Andrew Padd's idea, and it was a really good one. Let's move manufacturing into the area where auto body used to be, which is a closet for us now, really. And then the welding program can expand into the space where manufacturing has left, basically doubling the instructional space for both. It's like one of these ideas that's a great idea. We should do that. And let's figure out, and that happens a lot. The staff come up with things that they're close to that they see, like that, where somebody has an idea and that's a great idea, let's do that.
Yeah.
Like this.
Right.
And
let's go with this, like this.
Yeah.
Let's
do that. Let's try that. So, it's complicated to do. I'd rather not have two projects, construction parts of the projects going on at one time. So we want to get Vandalia Hall done first, kind of catch our breath. Our window for getting the EDA grant administered and the project done is 46 months.
Oh, wow.
We don't expect to take that long,
No.
but that's how long we would have to do it. There's some front end work that has to be done in the procurement of architects and general contractors, and the feds are very finicky about how that can be done or must be done, let me put it that way. So, you have to be careful through all that. You're a fool if you're not.
Right.
Then I have a question for you. What needs to be done to the space where auto body used to be in order to house the manufacturing program?
Great question. Auto body has two paint booths one very fairly new and usable for manufacturing because they do powder coating on some of the pieces, and one that's old, and there's a number of cranes and kind of winches and hoists, and there's a large frame straightener, you know, and these things need to be pulled out.
Okay.
The lighting, the flooring, the airflow, all of that needs to be improved. Also, there needs to be a better entrance to the space. You know, so probably we will need to come up with, not probably, we will need to come up with an entrance that goes out the end of the space that leads to the circle drive between the WCCT and where the manufacturing space will be. So not a huge amount, but definitely more space. And then in the welding area, it's really airflow, you know, moving the equipment, buying some new equipment. There's about $400,000 for us to buy new equipment total for both programs. So they figured out what they need most and want most, and situating that in a way that makes sense to the students and the instructor. So yeah, it's a $3 million project. The college has to match 20% of it. You know, so we need to come up with $600,000. I think we can do that, but that's not a small amount of money, and it's you know, I'd rather not, you know, pull it out of our savings account. You know,
no.
So.
And when do we anticipate actually, for want of a better term, breaking ground on the project?
Yeah, we've thought quite a bit about that. There's this, because it's a renovation, it's similar to Vandalia Hall in this way. There's a staging component of it that's tricky. You know, so we can't move manufacturing into auto body until auto body's cleaned out.
Exactly.
And we don't want to do that during the middle of a semester. So the first step will be, I think there'll be 3 steps to answer your question. The first will be to prepare and clean out the area where auto body is. That could happen within 6 months' time. And then at some point, probably maybe over Christmas break, but more likely after graduation in May of 22, then manufacturing would move over into the space where auto body used to be. That would be the second stage. And then the last stage, which would be complicated also, would be, but doable, would be moving welding, you know, to occupy double the space they currently have. That can be done in a way because, you know, welding can, while that's done, welding can stay in the space that it's in.
Sure, yeah.
You know,
They don't have to move far.
Right,
So.
yeah, so.
Well, it'll be exciting. It's certainly, those are 2 programs that are so in demand here, and they're in demand, as I said, in the workplace. So I'm excited to see construction move over to this side of the street, but yeah, we would love more questions on the topic, and if folks are interested in how they can get involved and perhaps helping to fund the project, certainly the ACC Foundation can help them with that. So
sure can.
Always email. Brenda is your guide to these things. She would be happy to help.
She's right next door, and she probably thinks, man, I wish sometimes I was further away.
No.
To be next door to the big guy. We have good communication. That's
do.
Fantastic. Well, we have a question from the audience, and actually it's almost as if this person knows our agenda because it segues right into our next topic.
Oh, okay.
So instead of asking my question, I'm just going to filter right into theirs, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to read it word for word because it's pretty well written. So throughout Michigan, community colleges have struggled with enrollment as a result of the pandemic. How has ACC fared with their enrollment during COVID times, and how has the college innovated to help its staff and students during the pandemic?
Wow, that is a wonderful question.
It is.
And that touches on so much of what we've done. The first question, how have we fared? Better than almost any other community college. But our enrollment is down about 7% in contact hours. This is the billable hours, you might say, slightly less in head count. And in fall, we were about 6% down. This would be compared to the previous year,
Right.
Yes.
which was pre-pandemic. For context, in fall 2020, our enrollment was up 4.1%, both in headcount and credit hours. We were the only community college among the 28 in Michigan to be up above zero. And, you know, this gets to a larger demographic challenge that the college faces. I mean, you folks have all graduated, as I did, from regional high schools.
Right.
And when I graduated from Elkona in 1977, we had 110 graduates, and there's 52 or 53 now. And Alpena had 750 or 775 in 1977, and now they have 280. Rogers City had 120 and they have 50 now. Oscoda had 220 and they have 80 now. This is the case at every K-12 we work with. So every year, at least for the past 40 or 45 years, every school that the college serves, every K-12, has had a incrementally smaller graduating class than the year before. So if you're just recruiting from K-12s, you have to get a higher percentage of a diminishing pool every year just to stay even. This is a difficult challenge. We, of course, don't recruit exclusively from K-12s in Northeast Michigan. Thank goodness. We have tech programs like UTT and nursing and concrete, criminal justice, especially UTT and concrete that attract students from outside the area. And our challenge then is, where do they stay? You know, well, is there housing? Is there adequate housing? This is an ongoing discussion we're having. So that question, then the pandemic, so this is like a long kind of, for those folks who are familiar with landscaping, this is like a slow burn.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, it's a slow burn. And then the pandemic was like a bonfire that ignited right in there. So, you know, that's in many ways has been the most challenging, interesting year in my 30 years at the college this past year in dealing with the pandemic, not me personally, but the staff.
Even with our enrollment declining by about 6% due to the pandemic, that's still much better than most of our peer community colleges. Why do you think that ACC has fared better? What have we done differently than the other schools that might make us not have suffered quite as badly?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think part of it is, you know, we have a track record of quality. We interact with our K-12s exhaustively. Mike Colleen and Darren Leitner do a wonderful job there. And I think part of it is nationally, community colleges, this sector of higher education has been hit harder by the pandemic than almost any other. And especially students of color, you know, so really good schools, Mott, Community College in Flint, you know, their enrollment took a 20% hit.
Wow.
You know, and it's not because all of a sudden they were 20% less effective.
Right.
You know? It's in Delta College, a wonderful college, almost a 20% hit. Petoskey, I mean, 20% compared to the year before.
Yeah.
And this is after maybe 10 or 12 years of almost every college every year declining a small amount.
Right.
So the enrollment challenge is just daunting. It's been ongoing and then got suddenly just catastrophically daunting.
So what have we done here as a staff to innovative ways to try to assist students to still be able to attend, or assist our faculty? They've had to morph in many different ways this past year in order to continue educating.
Yes, great question. Part of what we've done is what the service you provide. help students financially go to school. But the main piece in my mind was the resilience and professionalism of the faculty to step up and in the span of 48 hours go from teaching how they normally did for years in many cases to all remote. We started on a Monday, I recall this vividly, thinking, you know, if this virus gets up into Northeast Michigan, how are we going to handle that? And then the next day it was like MSU and U of M closed. Yeah. Oh, okay. You know, and then by Wednesday we were closed.
Right, it happened very quickly.
Right, and then by Friday the entire buildings were all closed. Yeah. We had to send everybody home, and the students in the housing we had to send home. And that was just pure adrenaline through there. But this a real integral person in this was the IT. An integral area was IT, and an integral person was Sarah Burt, who helped faculty get their content up on Blackboard and deliver it remotely through video conferencing. This is the question, the answer to the question. Took me a long time to get to.
That's okay. It's good context.
But the video conferencing has been a huge, we were investing in video conferencing before the pandemic. And this was an idea from Mark Grunder, a very good idea. And we had been featured in a national magazine for our innovation of deployment of video conferencing. That would be somebody teaching and the video capturing it, and students on the other end or in multiple sites being able to interact almost in a face-to-face way with an instructor. We did it. Because we had, again, small K-12s that wanted dual enrollment or wanted coursework from us. And, you know, there might be 4 students in Posen and, you know, 6 in Hale and, you know, 4 in Au Gres that all wanted an English class, you know, to transfer. But we couldn't afford to do it at each place individually. This technology allowed us to aggregate those and create one section that was viable. And this technology really came to bear in a very serendipitous way when the pandemic hit, because basically all of our coursework went to either online or video conferencing. And now, a year out, we find that a lot of students like remote and like video conferencing. They also like face-to-face. You know, so we have to deliver in all 3 areas. This is a learning curve that a lot of schools weren't quite as far along as we are. So this also is the part of the answer to your question, I think. But really, as I look at it from the DNA of the college and the work ethic and you know, rising to the occasion, that all really occurs during times of adversity, and those were adverse times. Yeah. And so.
Do you think that these expanded options for our students will help more students get an education, have that ability to get an education?
Yeah, you know, the remote learning works well for certainly transfer and gen ed stuff. It works less well in or not at all in things like welding and pole climbing and that have a lab function attached to them. Those folks, when the pandemic hit, really had to scramble just to kind of get their students through.
We certainly had some creative faculty.
We did.
Their lab assignments via video, and they really dedicated to making sure the students still got that course content.
Yes, they did a remarkable job. It can't be overstated how hard they worked and how committed to student success, really, that they are and demonstrated. You know, so. I think schools are trying to sort out, and you know, now there's been quite a bit of federal stimulus money that is kind of seeking a home or best practices, and you know, we've benefited from that some. And we've passed a lot of it on to students in hardship grants too. So the pandemic has been an extremely fluid, unprecedented time. And, I think we've come through it in remarkably good shape.
I agree.
Well, what's interesting about that too, is you talked earlier about some of the reasons that other community colleges have suffered with enrollment is partially due to demographics. And here, while we're not necessarily racially or ethnically diverse, we do have a lot of diversity in terms of our economics. We have folks who are living far afield, people who don't have internet access. Transportation becomes a problem. And I think that because we've had to serve these outlying communities, with the VCS equipment and technology like that we are in a unique position to help, but also we do face that technology gap. And
we do.
Something that I know we were very proud of being able to do was provide laptops to students who needed them. That's something that was direly needed. But we've done some other things that have helped students through the pandemic, and there's some services we already had that thank goodness we had them, and then there are other services that evolved because of the pandemic. And can you speak to some of those
Sure can,
those
yeah.
services?
I thank you for bringing that up. From the technology standpoint, we do live, there is a digital divide, and we experience it here in the rural Northeast Lower Michigan. There are places, everyone knows where their cell phone doesn't work well, or you can't get internet. And people who live in those dead spots, they cannot be participants at their home in remote learning. And this is an equity issue. The people who live in more affluent areas or where they have that, they're going to move ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And people who can't move ahead, they're going to fall further behind. So this really speaks to a lot of what the community college mission is to figure out how to not, exacerbate that divide, but to, close it, at least help people get an opportunity to succeed. So from the technology standpoint, the distribution of the laptops was a really neat thing. One thing we did early on that was a good idea is we installed hotspots outside the buildings because the buildings were locked. So, and I would often see this when I was around campus. People, would come in their cars and they'd aim their cell phone up at the hotspot, and that's how they'd get their work. And, that happened a lot. Some of the other social, things that we did, we have had a food pantry, which I feel very good about. And it's well used. It's, kind of detail-free. The door's open, the stuff is there. Students walk in and take what they need. And I have not seen any abuse of that over 5 years.
We did see a significant increase in the usage of the food pantry
Yeah.
since the pandemic started. So, and we also have seen a significant increase in the number of donors supporting that service that we offer. So that's been really heartwarming to see both the givers and the takers, being able to make this cycle go around.
Givers and takers, that's a good way to put it, yeah. And of course, though, when the building was locked up and the pantry is inside a building, that's a challenge. So Brenda and Carrie and Lisa Blumenthal, staffers here, figured out a way to get that to students, or found out which students needed that help, and did some deliveries. I was very proud of that effort. And then the mental health side of things, I may be jumping ahead of topic here. But clearly, this is an anxiety-provoking scenario, especially if you're, the pandemic, I mean, the fear of getting sick, maybe the fear of your parents or your grandparents getting sick, or your child. Maybe you don't have great health care, any at all.
You've lost your job.
You've
Even
lost your
just the
job.
stress of the classes format changing, not
Oh,
being able to
man.
see your teachers face to face.
Yeah, just stress in every direction you're looking.
Absolutely.
And that was very acute early on, and it's kind of stayed at a high level since. So Amanda Sumricks, who manages our SIP grant, it's a U.S. Department of Education grant, a very good grant for us. And Lisa Blumenthal, who works with Dawn and Amanda, really pressed for using some of the grant funds to fund mental health counseling. And they were the champions of it, and they pulled it off. You know, and they worked backward from a survey that they administered or wrote and students took, describing they're self-reporting their mental health or how they felt about things. And the comments, the feedback were, well, let me put it this way: nobody said I don't have any problems. I'm fine. I have no stress.
Yeah.
And it ranged from that to I need help.
Yes.
And so they're providing it. And so students make an appointment. They go see a counselor to talk about whatever issues they have. I think the demand for the counselor's time is more than we have allocated, but we're making that work. But that, in part, to me, is what community colleges also need to do, and is be responsive and nimble, not be overly bureaucratic, and not get to things that really need to get done. And food pantry and mental health counseling were fit; those needed to get done, and we did get them done. And I think students appreciate that. And this gets to, I think, the kind of your question about why our enrollment didn't suffer like other schools. In part, it is because of that kind of nexus of human connection. Very powerful.
Yeah. You know, I'd have to concur, Don. The ACC Foundation has certainly seen an increase in students requiring additional assistance just to get through their education. And certainly, I think at a community college level, this has always been something that we've had to address as student success. And how do we get the students here enrolled in classes, but there's still that long journey to get all the way through, and life happens along the way. While that has kind of always been the case, the pandemic has certainly underscored the need for additional student assistance. And I know that's one of the things that the ACC Foundation is committed to helping the college with, is instituting additional programs to where we can help students, so that if they have a bump in the road, that doesn't mean they have to quit their education. Right. They have mental counseling, they have food pantry, we may have student emergency funds possible, childcare, housing. I mean, the list goes on and on of what our students' needs are. And we really want to be there for them to help them be successful.
That is so important, and that's a great point. You know, research will show, and this kind of goes really across community colleges nationally, but it certainly applies here. There's maybe 3 or 4 main reasons why people drop out. And it illustrates the kind of the tenuous, hold they have on, where they are in their lives. Their car breaks down. It's a big issue. Somebody's car breaks down, a lot of people have to stop coming to class. Yeah. And they do. A child gets sick, or somebody gets sick in the family. Child care. What do I do with my kid, my children? How do I fit that into going to school? And then, disruptions in people's lives, divorces, illness of a spouse. These are really and money, and that's a 5th one. And, so the support that the foundation provides is is timely, and it intervenes at a point where it's most needed. And that allows some folks to get past that point and get through and eventually succeed and transform their life or the lives of their family. So that point of a problem for them is something that's in the past.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I think something that's really important that I have seen, I've only been in my job now for a year. I was here for 9 days before we had to
Yeah.
close down. And I was astounded at how efficient and how quickly and how expertly our entire staff, faculty, administration worked together to solve the problem, which was how do we keep delivering an education to these students. And as the pandemic unfolded, working in the foundation office and seeing the rising needs of food insecurity and housing insecurity and people who are just generally struggling, I think what we do so well here at Alpena Community College is taking the pulse of our community. We are a community college. And while we have folks that come here from all over the state and sometimes country and all over the world, we have some international students as well. I think what we do so well is meet the needs of this community. And the ACC Foundation has been integral in that. And so, you know, I kind of wonder, what can people do to help us, help Alpena Community College meet those unmet needs of the students? And Brenda, you can jump in here too, as the executive director of the foundation. What can people do to help?
You know, certainly support of our students through the gift of scholarships, through the gift of, you know, emergency assistance funds. What I see when I'm able to provide help through our donors to a student is it's not just the money, it's that message that's being delivered to the student of there are people here that believe in you and want you to succeed. And I see that time and time again in helping these students that they're grateful for the financial assistance or they're grateful for the food from the food pantry, but they know that there's people here that want to see them successful and see them complete their education and improve their lifestyle. Yeah. And so I think that's a really big thing. So, you know, even a note of encouragement, I think it's really great, but, you know, become active, stop into the college, see what we have going on, you know, support these projects and programs and our students in that way. Don, I don't know if you have, you know, a specific.
No, that's absolutely right. And all I could add to it is I was in an interesting conversation with two really bright people, and we were talking about schools or the temptation or the push to, you know, totally change what, you know, your relationship with students,
right.
The school's relationship. Should we do more? How do we help students? And what the foundation does help students. But you know, one of the points you made that is very compelling to me is sometimes it's just human interaction is the primary assistance they need. Yeah. And somebody caring about them, talking to them, asking how they're doing, intervening, not to make their path completely smooth, but to recognize when, you know, it's tough and provide encouragement. You know, it's just that human contact. So if people, you know, I think you folks have talked about establishing a mentoring sort of, I think that is very fruitful work. So the ways in which people who arrive at our door, in some cases ready to learn, in some cases carrying a lot of baggage and not ready, you know, we need to be there for all that. And figure out a way to, it's not a one-size-fits-all.
Very great point, Don, and you are absolutely right. Mary and I have been brainstorming all sorts of different ways, programs we can institute here, and the mentorship program is something that you folks will see in the future. It takes a bit to get up and going, but that it is something greatly needed, that our students need that type of support as well. excited about that.
Yeah, that'll be very exciting. I think the underlying point here is the transformative power of a community college in a community. And with programs like Michigan Reconnect, the pandemic was a big wake-up call for so many of us. And for some folks, that wake-up call is, gosh, I need to find a career, not a job. I need a career. And by seeking education here at Alpena Community College, they can get that career and they can have access to services that can help them succeed in life. So certainly our admissions department, Mike Colleen would love to talk to people who are interested in going back to school or starting school for the first time. No matter your age, it's never too late. And Michigan Reconnect is a wonderful program for folks who are 25 or older, who have a high school diploma or a GED, and greatly helps them with the cost of going to college. So we hope that they will take us up on that great opportunity.
Yeah, we do. And, you know, you had mentioned the term transformative. I do think community colleges, and when they're operating at their highest level, do provide that. And I've always been, and only more so as I've gone along, and now in about my 30th year here, the mission of the community college is so interesting because, you know, it's, most of them are relatively under-resourced compared to a research university like U of M or MSU or Michigan Tech. You know, it's a much more stripped down, but in many ways, more heterogeneous student mix for sure. And the learning that can take place in a community college classroom when it's well organized, well managed, and done in an inspired way, I would put up against the learning that can be obtained anywhere.
Absolutely.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, folks, we're about to wrap up here for the evening, and I'd love to invite you to ask a question through our chat feature. If anybody has a question pertaining to any of the topics we've discussed this evening or anything off topic, we'd be happy to address your questions. Dr. MacMaster, myself, or Mary will use each of our expertise to do our best to answer your questions. If you think of something after we close for the evening, feel free to reach out to us via email or, you know, give us a phone call. We would be happy to talk to any of you anytime about concerns or questions that you have about the college.
Absolutely.
And we have a wealth of knowledge here at the college. So if it's a question that you or I or Brenda, you know, maybe doesn't feel, not that I'm sure you know everything, Don, but you know, perhaps someone might have a little bit more knowledge on a topic.
Sure.
Something like Michigan Reconnect or something with our sports program here. We will direct them to, we'll connect those people and make sure that those questions are answered. So,
well, Mary, the best resource I have, I pull out my drawer and it has a list of
phone numbers. That's right, exactly.
This is the person that.
Delegation is a good thing.
You always have the answer when you have a great team.
That's true.
That's absolutely true. Well, I've been entertained. I don't know about you two, but I've had a lovely time. The fireplace does not emit much heat. It's a bit chilly, but you know, that's okay. There are worse things. It does. It looks good. Yeah. It does look good. And we would love it if you would let us know what topics, what people from the college you would like to see featured in our next Fireside Chat. Please drop me an email, eaganm@alpenacc.edu, EAGAN. You can Google it too, it'll be fine, or give me a call. And we would love to get those suggestions. And just a reminder that someone will be winning a fantastic gift basket of ACC bookstore swag. We picked out some really nice items, so we will do that drawing and send an email after the program tonight. And we will also be uploading the Fireside Chat to our social media and our YouTube channel so that you can watch this over and over again. And why wouldn't you want to, really? And please do look for an invitation to the next Fireside Chat and share it with someone who you think would enjoy the clearly Emmy-winning content of this this broadcast. So thank you so much,
My pleasure.
Dr. MacMaster.
Thank you
This was
both.
wonderful, and Brenda and Jess behind the camera, our technical guru, and we have had a lot of fun, and we thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, folks.